everybody, welcome back to Sprueverse, my scale model universe, and this is part 2 of the MK3 Dalek build from the '66 movie with Peter Cushing, Doctor Who and the Daleks. And I have to say, it's been a lot of fun, but not without its silliness. These kits were, forgive me, a little crude, and I don't say that disrespectfully, but one of the things we have to remember is that when this kit was out, there was not a lot of offerings. So Comet Miniatures were awesome to take the risk and put something out that was, scaled up a little bit and not, they attempted to do something of quality. When I was a young kid growing up in England, and yes, I'm British in case some of you didn't know that, I lived in a small town called Southend-on-Sea in Essex, pretty close to Basildon, Wayne, if you're watching. But I remember the local hardware store sold a Marx, it was called Marx, M-A-R-X toys. And it was a sort of a wind-up Dalek that just span around and round and round. And I remember playing with that for hours as a kid. Doctor Who is one of those things that, as you guys probably know by now, I'm very close to. I was a baby when my grandfather and I sat and watched the pilot episode of Unearthly Child, and I was hooked. And 760 episodes later, I was still watching the show until it was cancelled, I believe in '89, when Sylvester McCoy was playing the Doctor. Now, as a lot of you also know, I spent 7 years trying to get the rights to make the '96 movie starring Paul McGann, and ultimately, obviously, was successful in getting it made, but it was not without its heartaches. That production was a partnership of many companies, if you can believe this. There was the Fox Television Network who aired it. There was BBC Enterprises at the time, which was distributing the television series, and it was a separate arm of the BBC. Then there was the BBC itself, and then there was Universal Studios, under which the show was actually produced. The show was obviously picked up and went into production in '96, starring Paul McGann. And one of the first interesting things that I wanted to talk about before we get to some of the questions and also look at where I am with this kit, is that the biggest question I always got was Paul McGann my first choice as the Doctor? And it's a tough question to answer, really, because I went through a lot of development and a tremendous amount of time and energy went into trying to actually get the thing made, that there were at different moments in time, there were different sort of needs and values, and it's quite a complicated, layered reality to where we were. So you have to remember that in the television business, as in the movie business, but more so in the television business, there's art and there's commerce. And somewhere in between, hopefully, there's an opportunity for you to creatively put out something that you are passionate about and something you believe in. And so at one point, interestingly enough, I was introduced to Leonard Nimoy. And this was why I was still at Amblin, and it was still under the Amblin banner, this production. And I had lunch with Leonard, and he wanted to direct it. But at one moment, he thought about actually being in it as well. So that was an interesting notion to me, but I also felt that he was a little too cerebral. And I'd never seen him do anything with a sort of slightly arched bent to it. Because for me, personally, I wanted my doctor, to have a certain eccentricity to him. because I think that adds a layer to the character. Anytime there's a brightness to it, anytime there's an actor who wants to sort of take it to that next level, I think you just get a little more energy. If he's too cerebral, I think it sucks a lot of oxygen out of the show. But that's just my opinion, and there are hundreds of people who would disagree with me. But there you go. So while I was talking to Leonard Nimoy about directing, we had a list of actors that we were potentially wanting to go after. And the actor that Leonard Nimoy was most intrigued with working with was, in fact, Michael Crawford. And so we did reach out to Michael, and we, in fact, I went to a performance of Phantom of the Opera while he was filming in Los Angeles, performing in Los Angeles, I should say. And I went backstage to have a conversation with him. He was a charming gentleman, and he kindly said, "Thank you, but it's not something I feel I can do." So after Michael Crawford, there was quite a long list of actors who were actually discussed, and some I had some amazing meetings with. Eric Idle was one of them. What an awesome human being! It was great fun meeting him, and I really enjoyed it. But at the time, it was really interesting for me personally. I was worried about the celebrity of it all. Is like, if we put somebody in the role who had too much of what I called a celebrity label, were we going to take away from what we were trying to do? Did it become something that was a little too arch or a little too camp? And I was worried about that. I wanted this project to be taken seriously, but I wanted it to be a tremendous amount of fun. Unfortunately, obviously, we never went with Eric, but wow, that was a tremendous. It was a tremendous meeting, and I think he would have actually brought a lot to the role. There was Alan Rickman, who was an absolute gentleman, and I enjoyed meeting him. And he would have done it if we'd have made him an offer. But again, I didn't know. I just didn't feel it. Anyway, there's quite a list, and unfortunately I don't remember all of them. Those are just a few that popped into my head. But I did have a question about this, particularly from Jared R, I'll call you. So Jared, if you're out there, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a subscriber. Thank all of you for being subscribers to the channel. It means an awful lot to me, and I enjoy doing this with you. But his question was interesting. He asked about an American actor. He said, had they have insisted on putting an American actor in the show, would I have walked away? Jared, the truth of the matter is nobody really insisted on anything. They wanted the producers to have the final say, and at the time, the network was pretty generous in letting us sort of do what we wanted to do. They had very strong opinions about it being a quality actor, but they didn't insist on it being an American at all. There was a moment in time where there was a discussion about why a blue police box, because no American would ever know what it was. Oh yeah, this was insane. So finally I shut the whole thing down by reminding all of them that the police box was actually first invented in New York City and used in New York City. And once they realized that it was a piece of American history as well, they kind of forgot about that moment. But I kid you not, it was a serious moment, and fighting for every element that made it Doctor Who was not an easy task. But no, I would not have walked away from the project if it had been an American actor, because there's a lot of talented American actors out there who can do British accents. So he probably would have not been sort of British to the core, but he certainly probably would have, I would have sort of sought out something that maybe was sort of East Coast, Boston-esque, with a slightly intellectual bent to it. I don't know, but I'm just riffing. whether or not the Doctor should be played by someone from the UK, it's interesting. It's a British invention. It's a British piece of talent. But the reality of it is at the end of the day, what it really is a great piece of intellectual property, an amazing character, and a great story. And so I think as long as whoever it is brings a tremendous amount of passion to the role, it could, in my opinion, be really anybody. But its Britishness is what really quintessentially made it special. I'm just quickly going through here. They're asking if I'd have been put in charge of producing a new Doctor Who series, what would have I included? Well, there was, if you think about it, obviously there were 760 episodes from the original series. So in terms of storylines, my goodness, we did not have any shortage of those. But what I was trying to do was I was trying to bring back the show, and I was trying to embrace its core fans, but I was also trying to broaden the audience. So building bridges between the old and the new, and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, can only be done in series when you have an opportunity to build characters and try different things. So it's a really tough question to answer. But obviously, all the villains are, I think, good ones. It's just sort of recreating what they might look like. And there is some, there was some amazing concept drawings that were created for the Daleks, especially. So I'm going to put a couple of those shots up right now so you can see some of the concept art from the original production manual. So pretty cool, right? Another question was, who did I have the most fun working with on the film? It was a great cast and it was a great crew. It was a lot of fun. So I don't want to pick out one particular person, really. I really enjoyed the entire production, and we became a family. And that cohesion really makes for a fun production. So I would say I can't single out any one person. It was just a lot of fun and a real privilege to make the show. And one last question here is, there was a question about what parts of the film look like they were produced by CGI but actually practical effects. Well, obviously we had a real police box. We even had a miniature police box, a 3-foot version, which I've showed you in the first part of this this build series, which I still have. And that was used practically in the main title. We didn't use CGI for the main title. We didn't have the budget to do it. In those days, it was still very expensive to not only create these things, but it was still very crude in terms of what we could do to make things look photoreal. And interestingly enough, you go back to even the big motion pictures, like Titanic. If you look at it frame by frame by frame, you can always see when a film runs out of money and the shots get step framed, or they don't look quite right, and because they're rushed. And that's always a struggle you have when you're trying to do a big effects movie. Most of what we did was practical, but the master himself, who cocoons in the top of the show with Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor in the TARDIS, and it comes out of him. Of course, obviously that was CGI. Him going in, going back, sort of scooting around in the show, and then obviously taking over the body of Eric Roberts, who becomes the Master. Was also, it was a CGI element, but really, for the most part, we used an awful lot of practical effects. Now, the actual regeneration of the Doctor from Sylvester to Paul McGann was done in camera, and by some very, very talented practical effects people. Interestingly enough, the practical effects and the digital effects were supervised by somebody that you guys may or may not know. So if you recall the television series Leave It to Beaver, well, the older brother of Beaver, Tony Dow, was our visual effects supervisor on the show. Go figure. But anyway, let's take a break from talking ad nauseum about that, and I apologize if I've been a little long-winded, but a lot of people were asking me a lot of questions, and I thought it would be fun to do this in this setting. But anyway, after further ado, look what we've got here. Now, this baby is absolutely not finished. It is crude. But what I'm going to do is, let me tell you what I've done. So I decided to go with the black and chrome because I think it's got a real beefy kind of feel to it. I have lit the iris up in the eye. I have lit up the head cones, so I recreated the head cone lights so that they would light up. The head is still bobbing because it's not glued down. Nothing is glued down. It's all held together with a dream and a prayer right now. So, but we will be obviously fixing that. The gun was built from scratch. And I've lit that up as well. And I'm going to sort of turn these overheads off for a second here, and just fire it up for you, so you can see what's working here. And I'll get PhilCam on it here, so that we can see. But so there it is, getting lit up. The iris looks pretty good. The little red dot in the laser's lit up, so looking pretty good. So it's quite spiffy. I have to finish this manipulator arm. What I've done is I painted everything gloss back black. By the way, in watching the television series, the movie, one of the hilarious things, I mean, there's a lot of hilarious things, and by the way, I don't know whoever decided to produce that movie with Subotsky, but Aaron Subotsky, I think his name, Milton Subotsky. Wow, I don't know what drugs they were taking, but holy cow, the production design was all over the place. But what fun, right? I mean, come on, it was a blast to go watch it again, and see how they their origin story. You want an origin story? There's another origin story for you. Don't worry, I don't like that origin story. But in the feature film, everything was a little kind of chunkier and very strange, and the world of the Daleks was also very strange as well. But nevertheless, I think that it was worth taking a look at so that we could try and get as close as we could. Now, what's missing from this, obviously, is hundreds of these little chrome pieces. I'll put it in front of this camera here. Hundreds of these little chrome pieces, and they're going to go around the skirt, the top of the skirt here. And I haven't decided, because they give you two versions. These have to be painted, and these are going to be painted metal, and these will be wrapped around. They'll be wrapped around let me see if I can turn this around to this camera there. They'll be wrapped around like this, and they'll be painted metal, and so that'll be good. And then after I've done that, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to actually put this screen inside. So I've got to do that, and then the only other thing I've got to do is I've got to get these rods. Now these are made of plastic. I'll probably get some fashioned out of metal. I'll find something, or even a good styrene, quality styrene that doesn't have all of this flashing on it. But because when I took these off of these crude trees, I mean, you know, the way they were actually molded, it's like, oh my God, you know, good luck. But anyway, and these little rods, they just drop. They're going to drop down into the kit, into this frame, something like that. Anyway, they'll there we go. They just drop down, and they need to be painted as well, obviously. So I've got that to do, and then the only other thing you do is the bottom of this skirt, which is the lower piece, has to be low enough apparently to hide the join. So I assume that when a man got in this and decided he was going to move around, you know, obviously when they dropped this, they built this piece of the skirting right here to conceal how the drivers of these things got in and out of them. But anyway, there you go. That's a bit of an update for you. I will try to, I'll do one more of these, I think. We'll see this completely finished, and I may even put it on a little diorama, although I'm always constantly worried about shelf space around here, so I have to be careful about what things get ultimately put into a diorama and what ones don't. But a lot of fun. It's a great piece of nostalgia. It was certainly a wonderful piece of my childhood and a wonderful piece of my professional career to be able to say I worked on Doctor Who. Anyway, there you go. I hope everybody enjoyed this quick update. We'll do one more, as I said, and that will finish this series. So until we meet again, people of Earth, be well, be safe, build something, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.